Hey! Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Wildlands. Now, as you probably saw from the title, I lied. And today, I'd like to go through why, how, what, when, as well as sort of filling you in on the next steps. Certain changes are coming along to Wildlands and Planet Zoo as a general on the channel. To that end, however, we're not going to have any cinematic entries, any storyline going along with this episode because I kind of think a bit of context is needed. So we're going to do this episode first, and then next time we'll bring back all our cast of characters and get them firmly cemented in. Now, before I jump on into rambling, however, as always, if you enjoy today's episode, please make sure to click the like button. Really helps the channel out. And more importantly, this week there is going to be no engagement emoji. However, I would like to hear your thoughts once you've watched the video in the comments below. And if you don't necessarily want to do that, then, you know, rather than an engagement emoji, I'd want you to just shout engagement in giant capital letters, because engagement. And with that aside, let's go. So what is this video about and how did I lie? Well, a few episodes back you will recall me mentioning that I am going to not redo any areas of the zoo anymore, and we're just going to continue on with brand new habitats. I'm redoing the zoo. So I came to the conclusion at the end of the last episode in the Himalayas there that while the habitats are nice, they're not what I want them to be, and I feel like I've been rushing to get them out for our weekly videos. As a result, they've been a little safe, a little bit unimaginative, and they're not having the impact that I want them to be. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on that later on in the video. However, the general gist is we are going to rebuild the zoo, but we're going to rebuild it in a way that makes sense. So today we're starting off with a brand new entrance using the car park that we never used right from that very first episode. But to puncture what is otherwise a fairly dull build of me doing many circles, we're going to jump about the zoo and sort of discuss what the plans are for those areas, what's staying, what's going, and what is being rebuilt. Now, we're also going to have a couple of spoilers for future episodes, as well as what we can expect happening with the zoo with the launch of Planet Coaster 2 coming later this year. Before that, however, let's take this opportunity to jump over to one of our areas of the zoo and talk about what's happening there. So here we are in our butterfly and insect area of the zoo, and I'm really happy with these. I don't really want to change anything here. This turned out so much in line with what I wanted, and it really falls in line with what I wanted the zoo to really be, which is where all of this decoration is about experience for the guests. The animals have wonderful habitats. Obviously they're insects, so we're kind of limited to the exhibit sizes, but the point being is they have the opportunity to be really visually impactful, and we've not got to really worry about changing too much. This turned out so well that I still come back here just to have a wander through when doing cinematics, just because I love how it looks. One of the big changes that is going to affect this area, however, is obviously the removal of the entrance. So this area, including the gharial habitat, was only just rebuilt for the entranceway. And one of the biggest problems, and you'll have probably noticed it in a couple of videos, is that this area always gets fairly clogged up. And that's because the entrance is a little bit too small for the amount of guests that are coming through, thanks to the way the game's pathing works. So one big change that we are going to do in a future episode is we are going to change our previous entrance into a food court cafe type area. We're going to keep the gharials because I really love how that tank turned out with the nice curved front. But we're going to change it into somewhere for the guests to eat and drink, as well as sit amongst the gharials, and I think that has the opportunity to be really visually impressive. So that's something we'll come around to. I had intended to get it done for today's episode, but it was already dragging on a little long, and I feel like that may become a thing going forwards, where these builds take just that little bit longer to build, and therefore the videos are just that little bit longer to watch. Jumping back over then to our entrance area, we have completed our rounded template for the buildings, and we're going to start putting in some paths. We're deliberately going extra wide on these. In fact, we're going to do a ramp and a stairway, both of which can be used by guests, so that should hopefully cut down on the amount of blockages, but also because it's about time our zoo became disabled accessible. It wasn't before, it now is, and I also think the idea of making areas a lot more open, a lot more traversable, feeds into that idea of making something that is just better for the guests to use and also better for you guys to look at. So to explore a little bit more about what's prompted this decision, one big piece of persuasion is that I looked at the zoo from above and realised that the previous Wildlands had only used about a fifth of the map. We've already started to get a little bit of a lag coming through, which, considering my fairly hefty system here, should really not have been an issue. But equally, it was more a case of I'm not using the game to its max perspective. We were basically just popping down different habitats and linking them together with paths. There's no plan, there's no rhyme or reason, and not only that, it was starting to look a little bit cramped. It was also no secret that we've ran into some spacing issues with certain animals, and being able to resolve that and get that sorted is also high on my priority list. That does mean we'll end up building slightly bigger habitats than maybe are needed for the animals, but I'm actually more on board with that as it opens up the opportunity to be creative. Now, as we finish off our planters here with a little slew of wonderful temperate plants, let's check in with another area of the zoo and see what we're doing there. So checking in with the Himalaya area, or into the Himalayas as we've titled it, and this area is going to stay, it's not going anywhere. I still prefer this much more over the woodland habitat that we had here before. We are going to make a couple of changes. The snow leopards are going to stay, and I love how their habitats turned out. Really, really happy with those. The Himalayan bear, I don't know, it's a base game animal and I cannot get over how it looks. Now, I am going to go into a bit of a discussion later on about mods that we're going to bring in, but realistically, yeah, I think we're going to swap out the Himalayan bear. So my current plan for the Himalayan area is going to be removing 2 species, bringing in 3 new species, and 1 species is going to be moved to a new, more thematic area. No telling you which one that is, but I guarantee it won't be the bear, so it kind of only leaves us one other option. But outside of that, I do like how this area is set out. Again, the habitats are very thematic, they're very scenic, but they're just not detailed enough. So we may do a little bit of a revamp when we bring in a couple of these other species, as well as a little bit more of a thematic decoration of the path. This area, of course, is only half of our entry into the mountainous regions of Asia. So there is a whole new section coming on from the back of it as well. So I think, yeah, we're not beyond saving this bit. This is kind of still in line with where I'd like it to be. I just think it needs a little bit more polish, and I look forward to getting that done fairly shortly. Back over to the entrance again then, and we're now moving on to getting our plaza set up. So as you can see here from above, it's all based around these circles, and I wanted the idea that you walk into the plaza and you are surrounded by things to look at, things to do, but it's open enough that it's fully usable. We're also going to make ourselves some wonderful little concrete benches. Unfortunately, these are not usable in game, but they look so good in the end cinematic that I kind of just wanted to use them. You can see a little bit of the awkward pathing that we've had to do. I promise you, as you'll see at the end here, it just makes them walk everywhere, which looks really good. But I want to fill those gaps in. I don't want these very clear open spaces where nobody's walking. So we're going to put things in there. The other idea was this entire plaza is meant to be somewhat at the lowest height. So you'll notice that our ramps and our stairs leading away always take the guests upwards. Eventually, in the background, directly behind it, we will have a accurate rebuilding of Coltham House. That's going to be a long one, but it will be coming, and that will then be wonderfully framed by this plaza. As you get off the bus, look at the zoo, you've got this wonderful open plaza, and then just behind it, the magnificent sort of Tudor style Coltham House mansion, which we will probably be integrating into the zoo a little bit. Now, in the center of our plaza here, we're going to have this wonderful elm tree as a centerpiece, and then in the little planters that we made just now around the edges, I want to do little scenes in each. So for example, we're going to do one where the tree has been removed and it's slowly being taken over by the lower foliage. I'm also going to make little guards to go around the outside of these, just out of these cast iron poles. And you'll see quite a few of these come in later on, where I've used these cast irons to make some wonderful, nice chunky fences. The simplicity of it is what really makes them stand out for me, and I'm really happy how they turned out. In the centerpiece, we're going to go a bit more all in with the planting and get a really good combination of colors in there. While I do that, let's check on another area. So the Rainforest building. This is probably one of my favorite builds in the whole of the zoo. It turned out so well. It looks wonderfully industrial, but at the same time really natural, and this is certainly not going anywhere. We are going to change it, and in fact the South American area is probably going to experience the biggest amount of change. One of the biggest changes is in the center of this building, so we're going to keep our little snippet of rainforest, and we'll probably do a little bit of alteration, nothing too big. I really like how this turned out as it is. What we are going to do, however, is we are going to remove the divide that we currently have in place that's separating this into 3 different habitats. The biggest challenge I had with this area was specifically that mixed animal habitat with the capybara, the capuchin, the tapir and the peccary. It works and they're happy. I just didn't like it. The habitat was too split, the way that the game works, and that the keeper can't get over to the other side, so the enrichment items never got refilled. It just felt a little off. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this inside area solely into the giant otters, and they're going to have the entirety of this inner tank. The dwarf caiman will be moving to where the spectacle caiman are in our little cave outside swampy habitat, and again we're not going to change too much about that. I'll probably bring a couple more plants into it and just tidy it up a little, but I really, when it came down to it, I really like the model and the animations and the color of the dwarf caiman over the spectacle caiman, and I think we're getting a little heavy on crocodilians and we are bringing more in, so it kind of makes sense that one of them had to go, and unfortunately in this case it was the spectacle caiman, who has done us so well. The spectacle caiman, of course, being one of our best performing videos in the entire Wildlands build. So if you haven't seen that, I'll link it above. It's definitely worth a watch. But I'm looking forward to doing a couple of changes to that to get our wonderful dwarven caiman in there. Now, with the planting within the plaza complete, it's time to start working on the buildings. And we're going to start off by building our gate entrances. These are inspired by quite a lot of real life photos I've seen of various gateworks. And the one thing I noticed in comparable to smaller zoos, and certainly the zoos that I'm used to locally to me, they tend to work on the idea of having many entrances. While they are mostly never all open at the same time, when you get that big rush, summer holidays, weekend mornings, the ability to open 8-10 different gates tends to work out well. And I think for the way that the game pushes guests together in these big blobs of people, this will really solve a lot of our problems. So put down 8 or so gates. Actually, it might have even been 12. And we're just going to make some concrete structures to give them a little bit of shelter. We're going to bring back some of those cast iron fences again, just to stop people jumping between the gates. And then in these empty sections, we're going to build a entrance for disabled guests, as well as the ability for, in emergencies, for example, to be able to let people out without having to go through the turnstiles. Going to use the metal beams for that, and I wanted to go fancy but not too fancy, and I think we've accomplished that. It's just a standard metal bar gate, and then we're just going to do some crisscrosses behind it just to add a little bit of pattern and turn it green, as that seems to be the way the zoo's theming is always ending up. Now, while I do that, just to go and expand a little bit further on what I said earlier about wanting to bring in a lot more detail and really make this a guest and, in your case, the viewer focused zoo. I really enjoy Planet Zoo when it's natural. I like the natural builds, and some of the stuff that you see people make on YouTube and on Discord and on Reddit is amazing, and it looks wonderful for a photograph. However, a lot of what they were building, and I include myself in this, were not really functional for the game, and sometimes you kind of got to take a step back and realize that there is a line where things stop being useful in the game and you're doing it just because it looks good. Now, if this was a sandbox zoo, I could ignore that. I could drop down the space requirement on animals. I could take away the ability for them to jump 6 meters and escape, and make some really visually impressive habitats. However, I like the challenge of doing it on franchise. So going forwards, much like a lot of what this plaza entrance kind of gives off, is I want to go really detailed, but I also want it to have that element of, if I owned a zoo with no monetary concerns, what would you do? And I think that's probably what we've been missing out. We've been building a zoo on a realistic budget rather than on the Planet Zoo budget. If you look on the screen there, I'm currently at about £800,000 of just spare money. And I think that's probably not something most zoos have floating around for fun, certainly without reinvesting. So, with all the habitats I've mentioned so far that are changing, you can rest assured they're going to be coming back better than they are right now. And on top of that, the new habitats going forward will be following that same spirit. The idea of a really nice to look at habitat that ticks all the boxes for animal welfare and enrichment and works really well for them. But we're not going to err on the side of realism as much as we have been doing, at least in the form of monetary spending. Now on screen here you can see me just finishing up some of the decoration in the plaza. We're going to pop down these little metal rods. I love how this turned out. It was originally concepted as like a little sundial. It doesn't work as a sundial, it's just a pattern. But I just love how it looks, and it draws your eye back to that centre again. So much of this build was built around sight lines and what you can see. And it shows at the end where you sort of walk through and it's like, oh, there's all these little touches. And yeah, that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to get to. And there you can see it from above. Our plaza is pretty much complete. Now, before we jump on into some of the more technical parts of the surrounding buildings, let's take one final look at the last area of the zoo and discuss what's going on there. So, hopping our way back over to the South American area, we're going to focus now on the outer areas and discuss what's happening with these. So, as I hinted at before, the capybaras, the peccary, the tapir and the capuchin, this habitat doesn't work for me. So the easiest way of fixing this was to split them up, and what we're actually going to do is we're going to take the capuchins out. They're going to move over to a mixture of the giant otters outdoor area and where the tortoises were in the sort of entry plaza for the South American building. The capybaras, the tapir and the peccaries are going to be removed, and then we're going to bring back the capybaras and the tapir, but we're also going to enter in some additional animals. And just as a bit of a sneak peek for you, I'm not going to tell you everything, but I will give you an idea of some of the new animals coming along. So we will likely end up building a bit of a Pantanal style area, and within that we are going to bring in the anteater, the maned wolf and possibly the sloth. How we integrate those in will be interesting, and I have some plans, so I have been busy. I have been sketching down many an idea. However, if you have a better idea, if you would like to contribute some of your thoughts to these sort of areas, do pop them in the comments below. The idea of today's video is to give you all the options of throwing out your ideas and giving me some inspiration for areas you would like to see and that you think would work within the Wildlands setting. One final change to this area on the other side of the building is going to be for our one and solitary jaguar. I built the jaguar habitat very shortly after I came back from Chester, as they made such an impression on me. However, the way they've done it at Chester Zoo is they have this wonderful rainforest building that they get to wander around inside, and then they have outdoor area to basically keep separate from each other. Now I want to create something very similar in that I want the jaguar to have its own building. We'll incorporate a couple of other animals, a couple of exhibits, and really make it a secondary building to our Amazonian rainforest. So the plan is the jaguar will be getting its own setting, probably the biggest setting of pretty much any animal in the zoo, certainly so far, and that will be highlighting this wonderful animal in a lot more detail. Moving on to some more technical building now. So you may be wondering, what are these rounded buildings on the outside of the plaza going to be used for? Well, one of them, the biggest of them, is going to become a gift shop. And I've never built a gift shop in Planet Zoo. When they first came out, the technical difficulties they were having kind of steered me off them, and then there's never really been a place that would suit them. But obviously right in our entrance plaza now we have this wonderful big space. It makes sense to have a equally wonderful big gift shop, and I also want to integrate that with a couple of guest services, some toilets, a food area like an ice cream, etc. So that's going to be one of them. The others will be animal enclosures, and that will be for one of our new areas. Now, before I tell you all about the new areas on screen, you can see me building something fairly important, and that is going to be 2 monoliths or totems that are going to adorn our plaza. These will come in useful later on, and I'll update you in a separate video about what these are for. However, they are going to be excessively important to the zoo, and I can't wait to unveil them. So now that we've discussed what is going on with the older areas of the zoo, let's have a conversation about what's coming. And this is where I'd love your feedback. I have a list of animals for each area, which again, I'm not going to spoil completely, but I'm going to give you the names of the areas, and I want to hear what sort of animals you would like in them. Is there any particular animals you are excited for? I'm going to preface this list with being non-exhaustive. We will likely change it as time goes on. There is at least 1 more DLC coming, so obviously if any of the newer animals fit into these areas, I might get swept away with excitement and decide to use those instead. But so that you've got an idea, directly off the back of our plaza here, we're going to have our river banks, or the river banks, and you'll probably see a sign for this in the ending cinematics as I've started to lay down the foundations. This is going to be a sort of Western Asia, India style area where we're going to bring about some of the animals that live alongside the riverbanks in Asia. This is going to be where a lot of our larger animals come. We've got, for example, as a short spoiler, the Indian rhino and the water buffalo, as well as a few others. I've already mentioned the changes to the Himalayas, but we'll also be bringing in, on the other side of that, the forests of Asia. So the base of the Himalayas and the forests that go around it. Some entries into that area will be the Malayan tapir and the Barbarossa. Islands of the Red Ape, which is going to be a wonderful enclosed domed area that will bring about the wonderful orangutan, as well as a couple of other friends, including Oscar the water monitor and some Asian otters. The Secluded Isles. This is a building that I have wanted to build since getting Planet Zoo, and I finally feel I'm at the point where I can. This building will be an underwater experience where you can experience the saltwater crocodile in the flesh right up front and centre, as well as some other island inhabitants such as the cassowary and the little penguin. You may have noticed right from episode 1, there is an island floating in the lake that will eventually become the Lemur Island, where we are going to recreate a wonderful Madagascan area to house all of those wonderful little monkeys. In addition to these areas, we're also going to have an African savanna walk, and that's going to be inspired by some wonderful architecture from some very well-known architects, as well as a little Zen garden, a desert house, and as well as bringing some animals into the recreation of Coltham House Manor, which I can't wait to build. Now, all of these additions so far have had somewhat of a plan sketched out, and it's also really important to make sure that we get all the pathing and the experience of the guests as they go through. But I really want it to be collaborative. This is going to be a much more longer term project than I originally imagined, and that brings me on to sort of how I see it going forward as we near towards the end of this year. So, as many of you will know, Planet Coaster 2 has been announced, and there are ideas that I have wanted to do for a while that don't really fit in with Planet Zoo. I'm not only a Planet Zoo player, and I hope you'll probably see that with quite a few more games coming to the channel. Keep an eye out for the channel update for those. But I am going to jump on into Planet Coaster 2 when it launches. Now, I know a lot of you are really only here because you enjoyed the zoo aspect, and I get that and I understand that, and we're not going to be losing Planet Zoo at all. What I do foresee happening though is we will likely jump to a 2-week delivery for Planet Zoo. So 1 week Planet Coaster, 1 week Planet Zoo. It's no secret that these builds and these videos take an exceptionally long time to build and edit. And in fact, I'm probably editing this video for a longer period of time than it is taking me to build the entranceway in the game. Now, I'm not moaning. I really enjoy doing it, and it's a nice way of expressing creativity. And every time I build a video, I try to do something a little bit better. I know it doesn't always show, but I do try to do things a little better each time. So it's more a case of I can foresee Planet Coaster 2 having the same similar type of time constraints. So as a result, we will likely do 1 week one week the other, with a couple of other games scattered in. More info in the channel update for that. But what it does mean is that each Planet Zoo episode we do, each addition to Wildlands that we do, I need to be happy with, because rebuilding this all again and again and again really isn't an option. So to that end, that's why I ask you guys for your help. That's what I'm planning for the zoo. I've given you an idea of some of the stuff that's coming, and I'm going to keep being quite open about what we're building in the channel community posts and on Twitter, all of which is linked on my channel. From your side, if you'd like to be actively involved, I would absolutely love for your ideas, comments, animal suggestions, and if you've just found a zoo that you like, then pop it down in the comments below. Let me know. I read every single one, as you already know. And it really helps me out with keeping going and keeping that motivation up, which, I gotta be honest, was getting a little bit low a week or so ago as I was looking at the red panda habitat thinking, I'm just not happy with it. Just to recap as well, I did mention a little bit earlier, I'm going to start adding a couple of mods. Now, right now, while we are still waiting for what everybody is assuming to be the final download content pack for the game before support is officially withdrawn, I don't really want to start adding in animal mods, and I don't necessarily think I need to for Wildlands. I think there's more than enough animals that will get to a point where the zoo is figuratively unable to be loaded before we run out of things to put in the zoo. But I do want to look at doing a modded zoo playthrough. So what I am considering, and I'd be interested to hear everybody's feedback, is possibly resurrecting Nimoy Bay as a modded sandbox zoo with modded animals in, and really just going to town with animals that no one's seen inside the base game. Now, this won't be yet. I want to wait till we get that final download content pack first, because download packs and mods don't always play ball together. I have been using Freebuild in the background here, but I am going to bring in Planet Zoo Plus, which is going to open up a couple of possibilities for some better traversable area and allow me to do more interesting things with the animals. I've used it before, I've not been back to it since, but I'm starting to think it might be a good idea, as well as I say, Freebuild just to help us build a little bit easier. But if you are an avid mod enjoyer or just have never bothered with mods but would like to see them used, let me know in the comments below ones that you like, because as I say, I would love to bring back Nimoy Bay as a rebuilt, reimagined sandbox zoo that really just brings out animals that we don't really see in Planet Zoo. I think that'd be really, really fun. That wouldn't be a weekly episode thing, that would just be as and when we found a nice animal we wanted to build for, but it'd be a nice little break every now and then. Now, as we're rounding up, the plaza is getting there very, very slowly. As you can see in the background, it's pretty much complete. I'm just building a little bit of a bike shed. I saw this picture online of a bike shed in London. I just love the design of it. And this turned out really well. I was really, really, really impressed with myself. So I might put this one on the workshop, actually. If any of you want to give it a go in your zoo, it's a nice little entry. Not too piece heavy either. It's not too big. But yeah, so I'm just knocking a little bike shed together just to add a bit of interest to one side of the plaza here. In the background and before the cinematics, I'll go through and get some of these screens sorted. I'm thinking of bringing a couple more banners and a couple of more projection screens in with little adverts for the zoo. I don't know, I've left it quite clear. And I had on my list of things to do to just coat everywhere in banners again. But I don't know, I feel they can sometimes look a little bit too cheesy. Let me know your thoughts. If you think it needs more marketing, then we'll throw some more banners in there. Other than that, it's been an excessively long video, so if you've made it this far, 110 points to you. Again, really happy that you've stuck around, and I really hope that this and future videos live up to at least my expectation, but also your expectation of a good quality build, because I'm really happy with how it turned out. Now, as we finish off everything over here, popped a couple of bikes down, we'll have a quick zoom out, just see how it all looks, make sure everything is sorted, and then I think it's time to jump on in to the cinematics. Here we go. Now, as we coast along the entry road, which we've not done for many, many an episode, it's been months since we've been back here. We've got our wonderful little private road is still there. That will lead us up to Coltham House once it's built. And then we've got our brand new rebuilt little island. Didn't need to do this. No one ever comes here, but I love how it turned out. Again, just a little bit of detailing on the grass, a little bit of detailing on the bushes. We've got our mowed areas there. It's just, yeah, I just love how it turns out. It's a little bit of detail for the sake of detail. Also, during the build there, we popped together a little access path. So from our older area of the zoo with our previous entrance, which will eventually become that cafe, now we've got this little walkway along the front of that pond that we had at the front. And this walkway just brings you down to the main new plaza, as well as access from what used to be the main car park, which is now just an overflow car park. Like how, again, the guests won't use this, but you can imagine if you're going to the veterinary centre, or if you've parked in the wrong car park, you've now got a way of getting back over to the zoo. And then as we swoop on in, we've got this wonderful little car park here. Again, detail that is just not needed, but it makes the whole experience really good. Really happy how this turned out. We've got our buses there. That's where all our guests are arriving by. A couple of cars off the workshop popped in. Got this wonderful view as you go towards the main plaza area. Nothing's too big. That big elm tree just in the middle drawing your eye. I brought the old Wildlands rock that we had at our previous entrance. That's now got a new home just off to the side there, just to remember a little bit of the zoo's history. I spent a stupidly large amount of time on flooring with this project, and I'm really happy how it turned out. It shows, and I think it does make the difference, having these different brick patterns of concrete slabs. Our wonderful little bike racks there, just to add a little bit of detailing over on this side. We will, in a future episode, be building a brand new backstage area for the staff just through that gate ahead of us there. That will become backstage area really for all of the habitats in our riverbank area coming off of our plaza here, as well as staff room and also the new location of our trade centre. Once I let guests in, it was a really nice surprise to find that the layout of the paths and the layout of the little barriers that I've put underneath the path work really well. It keeps everyone going in and out of the right gate. I was also really shocked to find, and really happy about it, in that they don't all use the same in and out gates, which means you have this nice little flow of people as they enter and leave. They're not all just going through the same gate and getting clogged up. I really like that, because that was a big problem with our previous entrance. Now, as we approach the plaza from the other direction, we've got our wonderful staircases here. These turned out lovely. I love the fact we now have ramps everywhere, and because they're both paths, they're both used. Right now, no one's coming up this side because we've got nothing up there. They're all going up the other side for the rest of the zoo. Our buildings are looking a little sparse, but obviously that's our future project as we go through the next couple of episodes and build up the riverbank area. Our first habitat here on the left will be the subject of next week's video. Got a wonderful little monoliths there, wonderful little totems, and they're going to become equally important as we go forwards. Now, as we walk around the plaza, just the detailing and the way it feels, it's nice and open, it doesn't feel too crowded. Even with 2,000 to 3,000 guests walking through here, it doesn't feel like it's too boxed in. We've got all these wonderful little benches, we've got the manhole covers, the little planters. Oh, I just so happy how it turned out. This was one of those where I designed it on paper and actually spent a couple of revisions designing it on paper, and it looks exactly how I imagined it would. And I think that's the way forward. I think that's just how we're going to have to do habitats going forwards, because if they all turn out like this did, then yeah, I can't wait. Now, for all of those that will ask, because I know you're out there, I'm going to do one nice big swoop back and we're going to shoot into the sky. And I just want to emphasize how big this plaza is in comparison to what we've built before. So linking into what I was saying earlier on about how a lot of the previous parts of the zoo really didn't make use of the map space at all. As we zoom out into an aerial view here, you will see just how big this plaza is compared to the insect house and the butterfly house, and the old entryway combined are still barely the same size as this plaza. I can't wait to start filling in the areas around it. You can see the blue squares there marking out some of the sizing for some of the habitats. That's going to be next week. I'm really happy you joined and stuck around with the video for this long. We've covered a lot today. Put all your comments, your feedback, everything down in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.